and even more excited that we've got two wonderful guests today. We've got Dan Portick and we've got Paul from Javelin Content, and both got some fabulous stories, experience, and I believe some opportunities that could really change a lot of people's trajectory. So it's open. We depend on you. Feel free to share. With that, I'll turn it over to Dan first. Dan's been on the show before. Why don't you give us a quick update? And the word of the day is repurpose. So it'd be great to hear your first insights.
Repurpose. So do you want a quick overview of who I am?
Sure.
Or sure. Okay. Yeah. So I've been in the ad business about 35, 40 years. I've had my own agency for 20, and recently, probably 10 years ago, not really recently, we created a company called BBS Film Productions, which I've been running. And then really recently, we started a podcast company, division of BBS, for podcast production and marketing as well. And we repurpose a lot of things in our world.
Yep.
Okay, well, that's great. And, what are you seeing the trend these days towards, podcast? I know that's a primary interest of yours.
Sure. One of the big things right now are creating short form podcasts. You'll see it with some of the biggest podcasters out there. They do little 5-10 minute bits of information, and it's repurposed from some of their bigger shows, or they take it and put it into some of their larger shows at a later date. But they increase that. We've seen it with some of the bigger groups like Robert Kiyosaki and some of the big real estate groups. They all do that, and it just adds a lot of space, a lot of information that can be disseminated much more often, and it's a lot easier to create as well. So they may take an hour or two, knock out 20 of these things, and then disseminate them throughout the week. It just entices people to come on and listen to what they have to offer.
Well, that's great. Well, Paul, I'm going to sign off and on. I think I'm the cause of the echo, but why don't you share a little bit about yourself, and I'll be right back.
Yeah, thanks, Don. Yeah, I'm a father of two. I'm a family guy, right? I spent most of my career in the retail world. So for 15 very long years, I served people either in direct customer to customer interactions or from behind the scenes at a strategic level. Before I then got involved in an AI consultancy startup and a tech startup, and was part of my journey was to learn how to interact with people and build relationships at pace. And I learned the hard way that what you guys have just been talking about around repurposing, because I was running 4 LinkedIn accounts. I was trying to build a business on behalf of the owners, trying to get us in front of big C-suite enterprise businesses. Kind of with no sales background, no marketing background, I put 25 million ARR in front of those guys on their pipeline. And I did it through podcasting, live streaming, video content, and repurposing, being very efficient with what we did. So much so that February of last year, I split off to build my own business and then a second business on the back of that. And we specialize exactly as you said, Dan, in kind of helping business owners be more efficient with the content that they've got. Because let's be honest, no business owner sets out and thinks I'm going to be nailing social media and podcasts because that's going to help me win business. Nobody ever thinks that. What they want to do is they want to get on with their business, and the podcasting and the videos are a means to an end. And they've got to be able to concentrate on what their main job is. That's really hard for them to do sometimes. So it's all about that efficiency, and that's where repurposing really comes into its own. And just to echo something that you said there, Don, a lot of people now more than ever are concerned about their time. Time's finite. It's the one thing that we can't get more of. And so for that reason, I'm seeing exactly what you just said is people are almost having to get a buy-in to the full-length videos and podcasts. And they've got to do that through that very short-form content. They've got to build the trust that your content is worth following. There's value to be had. And so they've got to do that bit by bit. And it's only when they've seen 4, 5, 6 or more of your short clips Do they actually think I'm now going to spend 30 minutes of my very valuable time listening to your podcast at 2 speed or 1.5 speed? But exactly that. You've got to earn that trust. You've got to add value, and you've got to build it from the start. And that's all the kinds of things that I talk to my clients about with their anxiety of getting on video as well, because that's something that's a big hurdle for a lot of business owners to get over.
Well, that's so important, what you just mentioned. I know there's a little bit of an echo, sorry. Because trust is the thing you can build in real time with real people having consistent, real conversations, right? You get to know somebody, trust somebody before you even have to introduce yourself if you choose to. I mean, what I found is about 20% of the audience comments, 80% of the audience just watches. And you don't know who that 80% is. Just to give you another fact, LinkedIn publishes participation. So there's approximately 1 billion people registered on LinkedIn. About 18% do anything in a week. Comment, like, do anything. 2% do any content. But I used to think, well, there's 80% who don't do anything, right? If you take the 18 and the 2. But what they found is 80% of all customers are in the 80% who you never see or hear. Because they're using that as, like you mentioned, a fact finding. And, you know, there's nothing like referrals. There's nothing like validation. And if you already have a happy client who trusts you and looks forward to doing business with you, then the key is introducing them to somebody who can bring as much or more value through you, makes you, them, and the other person better. And the key to this is leverage, right? Because, you know, right now, if everybody paired their channels, everybody would be sharing everybody's community. And what's cool about that is if we're all in the same industry, doing pretty much the same thing, only about 20% of our connections are similar. So I found somebody who had 30, I've got 30, looks like we're doing the same kind of thing in the same kind of industry. And that's where you start getting leverage. So the key to a platform with 1 billion people is how do you scale it without having an issue with scale yourself? And that is through networking. That is through pay for performance, you know, initiative-based partnerships. Paul,
I've never understood the concern that some businesses seem to have around working with competition and networking with their competition, their perceived competition. Because if your business is distinct and you have value to add to your customers, you're different from the competition. You're not the same. You're not in the same space. You might do the same thing, but you are more than likely aimed at a very different audience. And if you are aimed at the same audience, the value that you bring and your business brings is very different to what that other person brings or their business brings. So I've never understood this worry about competition. For me, everybody is just another business owner who's out there. Some are collaborative, some aren't. And for me, like, I much prefer to work with collaborative business owners, regardless of whether they're a client or a network partner or just somebody to offload to. Sometimes, you know, it's surprising where the conversations go. And I would challenge people out there that if you have somebody in your network or in your feed that irritates you, that annoys you for whatever reason, go and have a conversation with them, challenge you. Go and have a conversation with them in 2024. More than anything, to find out why they irritate you, because that's a flaw that you have, not them. There's something and I find that those conversations are often very, very interesting. And actually, you'd be surprised how often that leads to business, because they quite often think the same way you do. And that's part of what irritates them. But network's everything, Dan. You're absolutely right.
Makes sense. Dan, what's your
I totally agree. One thing to your point, Paul, about people on LinkedIn and being better and having competition. I don't know if anybody else has noticed this, but there are a lot of very untrained people on LinkedIn that are just putting information out there sell, 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 sell. And if you're just a little better than them, you know what I mean? Just even a little better, you're going to be it's just like the baseball. If you can bat 1% more than the next guy, it makes a world of difference. I'll give you an example. Just the New Year's, instead of doing the selling thing, we tried just going and just saying Happy New Year to everybody, all our clients. Just Happy New Year. Wish you the best for this year. Got 4 pieces of business out of it in one day. Just, and there was no, hey, look forward to, because as a salesperson, you want to put that in there. You really want to put that in there. We do this for 35 years. You just want to remind you, they know what you do. They know what you're doing. You simply have to just say hello and be honest with them.
It's an easy way to stand out. Like, they're waiting for that. They're waiting for that moment. And the fact that you don't, they're waiting for it and then nothing.
Yeah.
And they go, huh? Yeah. Okay.
Well, I think what everybody forgets is we're doing everything online, right? Everything we do, everybody sees.
Right.
Every plan is made to be seen by the public and as many people in the public. But when I think people major in the minors come from a scarcity and lack of confidence, because everything I've done, I've learned from somebody on LinkedIn. I came into LinkedIn totally not knowing anything and really not trying to bring as much legacy from where I've been into it. And I know how much more I'm going to learn, but here's the bigger thing. It's not the competition, it's the opportunity, right? Your slice of the pie is dependent on how big the pie is. And if there's more pie than anybody's taken a slice of, you actually want more people doing it to soften the market.
Right.
Out of 1 billion people registered again, there's only 36,000 newsletters. Reduce that to live streams. I've done one every day for almost 2 years, and I can't name you 10 or 15 that I think are worth going to, and that's a stretch.
Right.
Let's say I'm 10 times, 100 times wrong. You get 24 times the comments as organic video with a live stream. So when you got a Ferrari versus a scooter, why wouldn't you apply that same time, thought, and effort to something that's going to get you more authenticity, also make you a super connector, and people want to be around people they want to be around, right? So connecting a circle of people who are authorities that you couldn't get hours of their time to share their latest thoughts, ideas, strategies. Gary Vee says he shares everything as soon as he gets it, knowing 98% of the people won't act on it.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not your information, it's them that determines whether they're going to do something. And you know what? If you teach somebody today, maybe they'll teach you tomorrow.
And you know what? The key with Gary is he pulls no punches. And people appreciate his honesty. So I think that's a big part of what he does as well.
Yeah,
and with
anybody.
anybody.
A big part of what I'm changing for 2024. I've been corporate for too long, Dan. I've been corporate for too long. I've been corporate for too long.
Yeah.
I've been too vanilla, and 2024 is my year to polarize people. So I'm calling things out, and it's fun. But it's hard to get the balance right because you don't want to go too far with it.
Yeah.
And Don, what you've just talked about, I call it the 2x2 club, right? So 98% of people will never ask for help. They'll just muddle on and try and do things themselves. The 2% that do ask for help, 98% of those people will do nothing with the information they're told. They'll just listen to it and then go back to the status quo. So it's the 2% of the 2% who will ask for help, stand on the shoulders of others who've made those mistakes, and then act on that. That's where the real value is. So if you want to be ahead in this game, it's easy to get ahead. You've just got to ask and listen and act. And it's the 2x2 club that just they're out there every day smashing out the park.
I know it's so true, because until you knock, do you know what is going to be behind the door and what's going to be open? And the more you knock and the more doors that open, the more that becomes the first act versus get close to the door and back off. or I'm not ready, I'm not strong enough, I'm not whatever enough, versus, hey, what do you got to lose?
Right.
There's no bridges being burned. And again, I think to what Dan said with his Happy New Year uh, opportunity was that you do it and you can always go back to what you did the day before. Here's what I think is the biggest challenge. People are afraid to admit what they have done or are doing isn't going to work. So they continue to defend it, they force it, then they start getting a little less integrity about it, and they've lost their soul over time and they haven't built a scalable, duplicatable business. I'm always looking, the secret to Tarzan was that he needed to catch another vine every time he jumped, right? He could swing all day long as he caught that vine.
Right.
I'm always looking to upsize, hey, let's trade this in on a better model. How do we make this run fast? And I think once you're into performance and you're into knowing it's only going to get better, when something in your mind tells you this is only going to get better, you're only going to meet more and more exciting people. I mean, 11 months ago, and Kelly's a great example. And let me just share who's in the audience, because without the audience, this show would never be what it is. Kelly, good morning, all. Look forward to this conversation. Kelly joined me January 19th, her first show. We've done over 100 shows in this last year. 4 or 5 months ago, she launched The Awesome Journey with Christy Howard, who used to do Fridays here. And it's an extremely successful show focused on veterans and first responders and their heroic stories and challenges. And now we're working on a bigger project. So, the idea is get into something with somebody and see how they work with you. First you got to get to know, trust, and like somebody, but you got to have a proposition, right? Mm-hmm. When you someone's going to say, well, hey, I'd love to get going. What do you got we can do tomorrow? And you got to be able, I'll send you the link, right? Or I'll go over the situation. And I think that's so important. The other thing is really being the kind of person people want to be around. What I found in my business life is that people like doing business with people they like, right? And I've been with a lot of people that never looked that much at the price, right? They were more involved with the service. And you know what? They respect and appreciate you and would like to see you make a decent income. I remember when I had my first store in Detroit when I was just out of college. I never worked for somebody except when I was 15. And I remember customers would come in and tell me, I know what this cost you, right? This wrench costs $15. You could sell it to me for $20 and still make $5, right? And I'd say, well, you're a pretty expensive auto mechanic, right? How would you feel if someone said, and then what am I, nothing to rent? I mean, people don't understand. So I say the best people want people to be successful with them. They don't want the story to be, hey, I work with this billionaire, he didn't pay me,
Right.
And so, I think the other beauty of the three of us, we have so much real life experience.
Yeah.
Dan, what do you have to add to this?
No, I agree, and, some people you're not going to get along with. It's just, especially when you're doing the numbers, it just, and the whole key behind it is to just, take what you can out of it and you move on and, and you build on what you're doing, and that's just the way it is. There are certain customers, I know it's hard to believe, but there are customers that you have to think about and maybe say, hey, this isn't a good fit for us. We need another vendor that would be more effective for them. And you look for the right ones. And I think that's where you start seeing growth, is finding those right clients that that align with what you do best and what you're able to give them the most value on. So I always think that's important when working with customers.
Well, Paul, it seems like you're building on integrity and trust. How do you take that to another level?
I think it's got to be about being consistently in front of people. So, to your point, there's a very small number of people who are active on LinkedIn, but they're all very active on LinkedIn. And you've got to cut through that noise to get in front of people. So if you think, especially if you're reaching senior leaders in businesses, if that's your audience or your audience is fairly niche, they might only come on LinkedIn 2-3 times a week maximum. They're probably only using it to check their news feed to find out what's going on. They're not actively posting. They're not spending a great deal of time on there. When they come on LinkedIn, you need to be in their feed and you need to be adding value, and they need to see you every time they come on, because that's how they get to know you without having met you. And one of the lessons I learned really early doors was, it's all great and well having a podcast, and it's all great and well live streaming once a week, but that's the equivalent of 2 posts a week. Here's my podcast, here's my live stream. You might do I've got a live stream coming up, and this was our live stream. But really, that's starting to stretch things a little bit. So you've got to be about, how can we do more with what we've got, and how can we be more efficient with it, so that we can get back to doing what our main business is, which probably isn't running the live stream for a lot of people, and it isn't running a podcast. It's a maybe a hobby, if at best, or it's a nice to have, but we really need to be doing this because we need to create some good content that reflects who we are. And it's about showing that transparency and honesty. Like, your video content has got to deliver who you are as a person. You can't go around saying things that you don't believe just because you should say them. Like, you've got to mean them. And the good thing about video is people can tell whether you mean them or not, because it's the equivalent of being in front of them. They've got that, you can read your body language, they can see your eyesight, they can see your enthusiasm and your motivation for saying things. And then for me, it's about combining technology and people to get that message out there as much as you can. I'm on Twitter, I'm on TikTok, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on YouTube, I'm on YouTube Shorts, I'm everywhere. And it's not because I want to annoy people, it's because my audience is split everywhere. They are all over. I don't know where they're going to come from. And I want to help educate people about the value of short form video, long form video, and generally people being on video, because that's the other mistake a lot of businesses make. They make it about the brand, not about the personalities. And exactly what you said, Don. People buy people. They don't buy brands. Nobody cares about your lovely logo and your flashy colours. What people care about is who the people are that are in the business, what do they do, and what do they not do. And don't be afraid to be transparent with that. We don't do X, Y, and Z. That's not our thing. If that's what you're looking for, you're not our customer. Don't be afraid to lose customers, because they were never your customer. They were a bad fit and they were going to churn. So make them a champion by turning them away before you even got started. Oh, do you know what? I love those guys. They weren't what we were after. They were something different. I thought they were what we wanted. But do you know what? They pointed us to the people who could help us. And actually, you, who I'm talking to now, you're a good fit for them. Go and talk to them. Job done.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, you make so many wonderful points there, because first of all, they're true. And you got to get people where they go, not where you are.
Yeah.
So even if you take LinkedIn, I do a poll every day. I do a newsletter every day. I do a live stream every day. I do a post every day. Why? Some people like polls, don't do newsletters. Some people like newsletters, don't do this, right? So you catch them where they're at. And all you do is repeat the same message 5 times that day, because to your point, Paul, what I found, people they come onto LinkedIn, they think it's a lottery. The more connections I can pick up, the more chances one of them might show up and give me something or reach out to me. And that's the passive, unproactive approach. And most people do that, and then they go for vanity numbers. Oh, I got 80,000 connections. All you're doing is fattening up your feed to make it irrelevant, because you get crowded out. LinkedIn starts thinking everybody who's responding and connecting to you is relevant. They start matching you up with more irrelevant people. Now you just created disruption and dissonance, and now you're hurting cats. Versus being a boutique shop, which you are. How many people on your staff? That makes you a boutique player, right? It's just like having a little piano bar with 20 tables versus trying to get an arena. But if what we're trying to do is share relevant thought with each other on a knowledge share basis, you only need 10, 12 people commenting because they're the ones serving up the softballs for us to hit. And the real value is who sees it after this, right? Because this continues to play and will play. And if you can repurpose, coming back to the word, what you did here and have, hey, I got 10, 20-second snippets that I could have never produced myself because I would have been thinking about it. I would have been producing it. I would have been editing it. But if someone gets you excited and you go off on something you never planned, and to your point, people see your emotion, people see your excitement, your confidence. You know, they always say it's your words that sell. I mean, it's your music that sells, not your words, right? If you're excited, jumping up and down, you could be talking a nursery rhyme and people will be interested. And if you're mumbling and stumbling, a whole different thing. Before we turn it over, let's get Nita's here, loving the conversation, guys. Quite interesting. Carrie's here, who's always here, talking about jokes. He's a joker. Renadeb from India here is every day. Good morning. Great to see you. Kelly is a big proponent of not using the pitch slap, you know, which is getting connected to somebody and all of a sudden they tell you how to get 300,000 leads in a day. Dennis is our poet laureate here. Agree live stream is so much better than dead stream to get you ahead. Beverly, who's been doing Tuesdays every Tuesday, wonderful therapist and coach up in Montreal. Good morning. Looking forward to this one for sure. Beverly comes back, and Beverly is starting her live stream. She got a very successful podcast she's been doing for a long time and has been integral in building what we have here. Good point, Don. You can't keep holding on, particularly in today's world. We move very quickly. It's all about growth and change. Sooner the better, faster the better. Agree to get ahead this year. We need to use our head. Happy 2024. Let's all have and enjoy more. Here's another one. I was doing things on my own and was stuck and then found someone to help. And now I have the momentum to get going to find work now. Good for you, Carrie. You know, and just being part of these communities and being seen, because you get top of mind awareness and pretty soon someone says, well, that might be something Carrie could do, right? Or something I could share with Carrie to help them get that. So just by participating over time in the audience, you get just as much visibility as the people on the stage. Dennis comes back with agree, being nice is more important than the price. Dennis has had a heating and cooling business for 44 years. You got to give him credit for staying in business that long. Linda's here, one of the finest people. Good morning, guys, and all interested in being willing to see. Many are finding more ways to make streams of income, and some surprised being a country girl looking to see what needs next. Great word for all to think of. Thank you, Linda. Renata comes back with repurpose means the act of adapting, modifying, or transforming something for a new or different purpose than its original one. Thank you, Renata. And here we got Harvey. So great to see you. Hi, great to be here today. Fantastic to hear some insights into repurposing. Had to make a comment via YouTube just as well when you were repurposed. And you know, that's the cool thing about live. Some things work sometimes, some things work other times. Not very much works all the time. You know, it's the echo. I saw where, like I say, we're on YouTube simulcast to LinkedIn too, so that's a second opportunity. Renadeb says, repurposing encourages individuals to think innovative and creatively. Harvey, real quick, just want to share his franchise show, follows my show every Tuesday. And then Kelly's show, The Awesome Journey, follows Harvey's show. So we got a triple decker. And then Harvey and Kelly are here Mondays. Kelly's here every Thursday too. And, you know, we're trying to use a core group to have a consistent message and not just a consistent visibility. Because people want dependability, reliability. That's why McDonald's and franchises do so well, because of consistency and uniformity. Nita says, thank you for sharing this wonderful information. Okay, I think okay. And I think last one, before we turn it over to Dan, sometimes repurposing involves finding solutions to challenges by thinking outside the box. For sure. Great comments, Dan. Great audience.
Yeah. So repurposing LinkedIn is something. We're talking a lot about LinkedIn. There's some things that you can do that I think a lot of people don't know when they get on LinkedIn. One being groups. We have found tremendous success for our clients and ourselves getting into groups and reaching out to them. It's kind of a little hack with LinkedIn. You can reach out to as many people in a group, if you remember, without having to be in the first line with them. And you can do it one time. You can send out an invitation. So we'll find groups that match what we're doing, and we can go in there many times and deal with the people we want and create an interaction that way, so you get more bang for the buck with that end of things. So and there's a lot of other little things in LinkedIn that if you do a little studying, you can repurpose their ideas and really use them for more than just like contacting people on the one-to-one on the one level. So I think that's pretty interesting. The other thing is videos, repurposing your videos on LinkedIn, doing it in a native format. In other words, instead of taking like a YouTube link and bringing it into LinkedIn, you want to use it as like bring the video directly into LinkedIn. LinkedIn thinks if you bring in a link, they're gonna click on it. You're going outside of their platform, and what you want to do is if you have it in their platform and on their platform, you're keeping them there. So they're going to their algorithms are going to keep that, higher in the search when people are looking for things.
Well, I think with that, one thing about LinkedIn, you get same day numbers, right? You do something in the morning, you're going to get your numbers.
Yeah.
The numbers should be a guide, not only in the quantity, but the quality of who it is, right? Who is responding. Right. That's telling you what you're attracting. I think that the tighter you can niche what you do, the less filtering you have to have when the people come through, right? You get 100 responses and have 20 relevant. Why not get 23 with 20 relevant? And that's what I look at is what are my numbers? And what's my SSI score? Because that will determine how much reach you have. And, just to, I'll share something real quick. And let me get it here. But you can see, here's my numbers over the year for 12 months. And I'm already up to 1,157,000 impressions. And it's up 2,900% over a year ago. So, obviously I'm not bothering people. I'm attracting more people. And I think that's really the key is let your numbers tell you when to repurpose. Here's what I know. Things go stale on you faster than you think relative to other people. So you create something and think everybody saw it the next day, you're never going to do it again. Repurposing, sharing the same content every day is better than not having any content the next day, right? In retail or in business, it's like sell what you have, right? You can't sell what you don't have in stock, at least not right now. So I think people should say, how do I get to a level of consistency? What can I do every day that makes it easy for me to do? And it could be just like Dan says, how I got started, 5 quotes, 5 tips, and 5 people. And I grew to 25,000 connections in 4 months, right? And I tagged 150 people every day. And at that point, everybody had to respond if they wanted to keep getting tagged. And LinkedIn sees what the action is once you post. So for the first hour, they sit back and they say, wow, right when I posted, 40 people responded. Now, the caveat there is if it's the same 40 people and never goes beyond there, it's an obvious engagement pod, right? And they know that. So they look at where it reaches beyond. And
Right.
you can have 500 comments from 30 people. So I think once you decide what's so important is strategy, best practices, working with somebody who's already doing what you're hoping to do, and take a little money and trade it for a lot of time and trouble and no guarantee of success. Because most people are just risk averse. They're saying, well, I've been on LinkedIn, haven't spent any money, haven't lost anything. Well, you put in 15 hours a week times 50, that's 800 hours. How much did you monetize? Right? How much did you get in return? And would somebody pay you if you were doing this job for them based on what you're responding to? I mean, those are key questions, because if you can't hire yourself and do better for yourself, then you shouldn't be working for yourself, right? So Dan, no, let's go to Paul. I'm sorry, Paul, your turn.
I think it's fascinating. Exactly what you said about the right people, right? And this has got to be true for everyone, is it doesn't matter how many views you get. It doesn't matter how many engagements you get. It doesn't matter how many comments you get. It's about attracting the right sort of niche. So when I repurposed my brand from working for the AI startup that I used to work for, and I came to work for myself in content management, totally different industry, completely different ideal audience. I had to change my network. I changed how I posted, what I wrote, and I posted a video up, and it got 200 views. And I was used to getting 5,000 or 10,000 views. I was devastated. It was only a short video. It was 30 seconds, 45 seconds. And I went and looked at the demographics on that video. And in that video, those 250 people say there was about 25% were CEOs, 15% were executive directors, 12% were C-suite or senior leaders, 10% were founders, and the rest were business and salespeople. And I was like, do you know what? I will take that all day long, because I would much rather be reaching my ideal audience than worrying about the numbers themselves. And everybody worries about the numbers to start with. And believe me, after 6 months, you still worry about the numbers. I still worry about the numbers now. I know they're not important, but I still care about them. It's so hard. Exactly like you said, Dan. The SSI score on Sales Navigator, I was in the top 1% in salespeople for AI and consultancy. I lost that when I changed career and moved into my own business, and I'm now back in the 1% again. And 1% of content creators, I am much more impressed with, because now I'm in a much more competitive field. Everybody's active on LinkedIn. So again, you've got to consider your numbers versus who your audience are, because not everybody has a broad addressable audience. Some people's audience is really quite small. So it's okay to have small numbers if you've only got a small ideal audience. You want to have a small number, because those numbers are ever more important. And to go back to I can't remember which one of you said it, but we were talking about niching your posts down to speak to individuals. And I think that is paramount right now. That is super important, because that's how you stand out from the crowd. As an example, I did a post about 3-4 months ago, the first time I mentioned that I wanted to work with ADHD business owners. I got 4 pieces of business from that one post. First time I'd ever mentioned it. I released a small series about being an ADHD business owner over the Christmas period. It got my best views on YouTube ever. It's definitely a direction I'm going in, but it's being very, very specific and thinking of 1 or 2 people when you write the content, when you record the content, that you know it will resonate and answer their problems. Because if you're talking to one person, there will be others out there who resonate. If you're not resonating with that one person, you're resonating with no one. And that's the important thing for people to think about when they're creating the content, is alienate 80%. I don't care about the 80%. your audience is that 20%. And if you don't resonate with that 20% and everybody's indifferent, then you've failed. So yeah, I think those are the key things to think about when you're creating things. And then for me, everybody consumes content in a different way. Consider me as ADHD. I rarely. It's ironic, right? I'm a big fan of video content, but I rarely watch video myself. I can't consume it the way I would like to. I sit there for 30 seconds and shiny thing, and I'm off doing something else. So for me, audio content is much more powerful, and I will happily sit there with a podcast on audio and listen to it while I'm working. So that's why it's important to repurpose, because it's not just about filling the space and being out there all the time. It's about giving people the opportunity to hear your message in different forms, in different styles, in different ways that resonate with them, not with how you think it should resonate.
Dan, what's your thoughts? That was beautiful.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I see that in the podcast world, our podcast division. We get people come in and say, what's the goal of your podcast? They'll say, I want lots of followers because I'm going to make my money on followers, and they may not. That's great. It's a long game when you do that, but we're seeing a trend where some of our biggest clients right now may only have 500 or 1,000 followers, but they may be the top architects in the world. They come to the show every time. One of our people, they are building a facade engineers, and they bring on their show is engineers. I mean, not engineers, architects, and they all talk and they all know each other and they all buy from him, but they come on the show as guests. That is a trend, I guess. Think about that audience that you want. You may not want to be the Joe Rogan of the world, because it takes a long time and you need at least 15,000 people to really start seeing any money out of it, subscribers. But on the other end of it, if you're a business and you're doing it, like we have a podcast that we do in addition to what we're doing, we bring people on our podcast. Many of them become customers because they like coming on podcast. They need to see what they're all about. It's a great way to do it, and also highlight their service as well. So it's kind of like a win-win.
Well, I've always been a bigger fan of showing than telling. And
Right.
There's nothing like experiencing,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's easy to bring somebody on a show like this who typically is a little intimidated by live, by video, by all this stuff, because a little bit self-conscious. But once they get into the swing of things, they love it. And when you can have someone experience something for the first time that they love, based on the experience, not be told what it's going to be and how it's going to be, and because that's just kind of like, I hear it, but I don't feel it. And everybody's going to do the best they can for themselves, I believe, right? So if they see something better and they're looking for something better, they're going to start engaging in it. And it could be in the audience, it could be on the show. Carl, great example, joined up here a couple months ago. Started a collaboration group for just live stream speakers. So we meet every other Thursday and we go over what'd you learn, what'd you do, what can we all get out of this, right? Like a bunch of comics explaining, I just went to this gig and here was the audience. And if you're going there, here's what to expect. But what's so important is, I say, Harvey got there in 5 or 6 months just by accident. Carl joined for the purpose of getting there. He sent me an email last night. He's only been in it 8 weeks. I've already chosen the 17th to launch my show, right? So if we can compress the time, provide a built-in audience that they can take with them. See, that's the beauty. Show up here, earn the trust of the audience. Too many speakers come here and think they're doing somebody a favor, and everybody here knows each other intimately every day, and they don't know where this guy came from and why he thinks he's so valuable. Versus meet people where they are. If people are getting overwhelmed with pitches and with scammy, slimy sales approaches, the default would be kinder, be more empathetic, be more caring. They say no one cares how much no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care, right? A little humility, a little being humble, a little, I know where you're at. I was just there, and here's what happened. And if I can do it, you can do it, right? And all of a sudden people start thinking, well, you know, I was like thinking, but now maybe there's something. No one wants to lose just to lose. And I've seen so many people give up, not because they weren't capable, they ran out of gas. Maybe they had a home that says you got to start making money. You can't be playing around like this forever, right? Who knows what it is? So I'm saying by having a group, it's a support group that meets every 2 weeks, keeps you going to say, hey, in 2 weeks at least I can lay it on the table and say, can anybody help me here? And what happens then, you start doing events together, workshops together. I was talking to this wonderful lady who we're talking with, Mary Gardner was on the show a week or two ago. She's one of the premier speaker engagers. She gets people on podcasts, live streams, 25,000 person audiences, right? But who do you know, and that's what the Harvey's benefit, I know I'm skipping around, is the franchise person? Who is the podcast person? Who's the repurposing purpose? You know, there's a saying, name it, claim it, and support it, right? If you claim that you're this and that, and you can support this and that, then you are this and that. And then everybody wants to be around you because you're creating all of these different interactions and opportunities. So, Dan, you know, looks like we got quite a bit of comments, even though Harvey did tell me that he's added some comments and it's not showing up. He had to go through YouTube. But this is a fascinating conversation we're having because we're all in this working it every day. And I agree so much with Paul is that the ones who do a lot and do it well, and are used to doing a lot and doing it well. And those are the, you know, they say, if you want something done, find a busy person. So, Dan.
Right. And, you know, I agree. You know, it's funny because I go back to the podcast world. You know, we've done a lot of research over the past 2 years on it. And there's a lot of people down here that are doing it as a hobby. And then there's these groups up here that are just nailing it. I mean, and there's, you know, $40, $50, $60,000 a month in advertising just for their podcasts, but there's no one here. There's no one in that middle. Very few people are in the middle that are making a living and just kind of doing it. It's real interesting to see that, you know, is, you know, so, you know, people are either down here or way up there, you know, in that process, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Well, and I think people have to understand the elephant in the room is LinkedIn. So
Right.
Everything you do, LinkedIn knows what you're doing, how you're doing it. There's not a lot that they can't, you don't do that much that they can't keep up with especially with Microsoft behind them. So the key is what are you doing to serve them? Because that's where they reward you is organic reach, right? So, you know, and I was talking, I forget the gentleman, but every time you use a LinkedIn tool, it gives you credit, right? So if you're live streaming, you're doing polls, you're sharing more and more of their tools. Their whole goal is to keep more and more people on LinkedIn, interacting, spending time, because that's where they get their marketing dollars, right? Is through advertising or Sales Navigator or whatever tools they have. So the key is eventually, once you can become more and more on their side, they have a vested interest in helping you do more and more on your side. And to give you an example, you know, I was a big e-marketplace player. You know, I was one of the first 6 companies to be invited to Walmart's private marketplace. And we were only 6 companies for 2 years before they opened it to the public. And one was Wayfair and a few other companies. But what I found is when I went to them and say, what's your biggest challenge? I already had scale in place and they already had a problem in place. Right? So for me to say, hey, I can move this stuff for you, or I go to manufacturing, you have things where they'd be a buyout and they had to get rid of the inventory, or something wasn't right and they needed to off it to someplace like eBay. So The key thing is getting something that's already scalable and allow yourself to figure how to use scale. And the best way to scale is through collaboration. It is not hiring a bunch of people, buying a bunch of this, because now you got an overhead, right?
Oh, yeah.
You get one payable and you hire a payable person, and now you got to make $1,500, which means you got to sell 7 or whatever it is just to pay that person. And then you add something else, and all you're doing is ratcheting up costs with sales and not getting any profitability.
Yeah.
And I think just in time, pay for performance. And, if you're good, be good, stay good, right? And continue to do that. What I love about it is marketing is the toughest thing for most people. Delivering the service isn't that tough. So if you can get a funnel going through somebody else with someone else and do it on a 90-day trial, right? And see what that can happen. Because if you succeed at that, you can add another piece to the puzzle. And before you know it, you're a hub for people who have valued services. And in a sense, what you do is create a marketplace and visibility. And I think that's really where you want to be, is coming from $1 billion down, not from 1 up. Because 1 up is like I catch something here, catch something there, and before you know it, my year's up. So we're coming up on 51 minutes, Paul. This is your first show. What have you gained as far as experience?
I think for me, it's been interesting to see the impacts of more regular live streams, because I've always been a big fan of doing it once a week, and I've leveraged that successfully, and I know the power of just doing it once per week. And it's impressive to see somebody doing that day in, day out, and the impacts that can have. And I think the lessons are out there for all of us, right? It is, you get out what you put in. People are afraid to press go on things. They're afraid to put things at risk, exactly as you said, Don. It is about taking that risk, putting yourself out there. You're already a business owner. What else have you got to lose? What else have you got to lose? But find a way of doing it efficiently, because you can't let it also distract you from the purpose of your business. If your business is the live stream, if it is the podcast, fantastic. Double down on it, do it more. If your business relies on that podcast or that live stream and you're not sure whether it's successful or not, if you never put the full effort behind that one thing, how will you ever know whether you've been successful or not? And the thing that always kind of came back to me, the frustration I always had with the business for me, was I used to get asked the single question that everybody comes back to is, so how many leads have we driven from your podcast or your live stream this year? And the answer for me always kind of goes back to, well, I don't know. How well did you do your client discovery to find out where they found out about us? Because that's the important thing. If you want to find out how important your live stream or your video is to you as a business, you need to attribute your customers correctly. And it's not a drop-down box that says, where did you hear about us? Was it the website? Was it word of mouth? Was it a friend? Who was the friend? Like, you've got to let them free type in that text box to say, do you know what? I remember seeing you on LinkedIn 6 months ago, and I saw one of your live streams. And then yesterday I had the exact problem that you solved, and I found myself on your website. Yes, you did come from the website, but actually attribution, you came from my LinkedIn feed. And that's the important bit that everybody gets wrong. If you want to measure your success, you've got to dig. You've got to find out from your customers where they actually originated from. So that's, yeah, I've thoroughly enjoyed it. It's been great mixing with you guys. Thank you very much for having me along, Don.
Well, it's a pleasure, Paul, because it's so nice to hear someone say something that you've been thinking and believing, and it confirms it and validates it, but it also lets you hear it from somebody else, because you're always suspect when you tell yourself too much over time. Yep. Right? That you're starting to adjust it to certain things that aren't tied to reality. And I think one thing I'm seeing too, and when you see so many new facets, it's kind of interesting. The deeper you get, the richer it gets and the less crowded it gets. And pretty soon you're picking up nuances and you're picking up foundational elements that no one can see at the surface. So when I look at this, it's like this is the new step before having a Zoom with a stranger, right? If you bring someone on as a guest, it's just for being a guest, but now you're getting to talk to them in front of a crowd, which everybody will tend to be on their better behavior. And the second thing is you get to know them before you even have to choose to do a Zoom, right? And here's the thing with a Zoom. I have a Zoom, you have a Zoom. We get together. Usually the hope is that at the end, oh, I love everything you're doing. You're just terrific. If I ever know somebody, you're the first person I'll think of, and they do the same, and nothing happens. 6 months later, a year comes by just because of time. Hey, want to catch up with you? You know, that saying, it's easier to give birth than raise the dead. And most people are going back to what never did anything, what never wanted to do anything, and thinks time's on their side, not knowing 100 people have done the same pitch between you and the next pitch, versus really saying, hey, I think we got something. You know, I mean, isn't it cool? When I was in business, I was hunting to make deals. I had to make things happen. I wasn't like, well, when I feel like it or when it's right. The other big element is not just return on investment, but cost of inaction, right? You put $100 in, you get 50 back. You say, well, I got half my money back. Well, I didn't do this. I don't know what that could have been worth. And you never know.
Yeah.
And I'd rather say, hey, I learned what it wasn't. At least I learned something that I didn't know, or I wouldn't have had to do it to learn it. And you give yourself credit, because you got to learn before you can earn. And too many people have that lottery mentality. I'll get lucky. Well, lucky doesn't scale and doesn't duplicate. And I think the better thing is, if you don't have enough, do more. If you do more and you don't have enough, do different. Right? There's something about it that isn't clicking, because we're not here to prove whether LinkedIn or live streaming works. There's plenty of very successful people that are living off of it. And it's kind of like a snowball going up a mountain. It takes forever on the way up, and you can't stop it on the way down. But too many people stop before they get to the top. Now, Dan.
No, I agree with what you're saying completely. And then the other thing is, you know, I embrace AI, because it is going to make your life easier, you know, and in every aspect. You know, one thing that we're looking at is our goal is to have 80% of our work being done elsewhere and overseeing 20% of it. And that's where our 20%, I mean, our 20% would be us overseeing it. But all that's through AI, you know, and the things that are available to businesses now to streamline their world, if they look for it, you know, it's just amazing. And if you're not doing it, your competition is.
Well, that makes total sense, you know. And how can you be at the front end of everything? And you can't. But you can be at the front end with people who are at the front end with those things. And here's the other thing I learned over time. You're better off doing more business with less players than less business with more players. So if you can be a one-stop shop, right, and be able to be the conduit to podcasting, to repurposing content, and have an alliance, right, that's more than just an affiliate program. Send me somebody, I'll send you some money. It's like, hey, how do we make your packaging more robust? How do we make your value adds more than the competition? Because people don't want to go to 2 or 3 sources. They don't want to deal with 3 different sets of rules and managers and everything else. They, you know, when I was my own founder and owner for those 37 years, I'd have so many salespeople tell me how they could save me money. And they didn't ever talk about how they're going to make my life or my business's life easier. Right? And I was always more interested in disruption. Yeah, we'll change this and it'll take 4 days and everybody will get screwy around here and we'll save $100 a month, you know, versus, you know, you want somebody that sees a bigger picture of your picture and can share that with you and show you how they can get you there. Yeah. And if you're 100% believer in what you're doing, it's a disservice not to share it as much as you can, as often as you can, because the proof's in the pudding. And, you know, I've got people honestly sending me emails saying my whole world, my whole life has changed now. people who gave up dreaming and believing, who thought that the parade had passed them by because they needed a gatekeeper. They needed permission. They need someone to hire them. And I tell everybody, if you're out of work, hire yourself tomorrow. Put yourself to work. Do what you're going to do for that person.
Yeah.
And work a little harder. In the meantime, whatever happens with that person is going to happen anyways. So I think, you got to start with where you are, with what you got, and build from there. They say start before you're ready, because you're never ready. So I can keep throwing out all kinds of stuff. Let's get to Harvey, because I admire Harvey so much. Great points, Paul, about finding your niche. My niche is franchising. There are 1 billion people on LinkedIn, but there are only 150,000 events and only 250 franchising events. And I think that's so perfect, because it relates to Dan saying, nobody loves groups and likes groups. Why? Because they don't have a strategy, right? They walk into a group, they share a post that had nothing to do with the group, but they're sharing it, and they get nothing. They do that 4 or 5 times, and they say groups don't work, and they don't. That's the way you work them. But just like if you want to do a newsletter, have a strategy, have a reason why and how and what to expect. If you want to do polls, have a strategy. LinkedIn or live streaming only allows you so many things to do, and they tell you how they're allowing you to do it, right? Why not check the things off and say, I know this, I know how to operate it, I know how to work it, it's in your tool shed. And you take it out when you need it, but it's there. And if you know what it is, now maybe you treat it differently. And if you find somebody who can organize your stuff to say, here is optimum, let's do a review and an audit, right? And what if I can get you more for less time, less worry, and have a system you just follow? Too many people are at 11 o'clock tonight, I got to create a post. I got to figure what I'm going to say and what's it going to, why? You weren't Shakespeare before you got here. You're not going to be Shakespeare just because you're starting to write. Another franchise comment. That makes it easy to become a top event, and my attendees are 150 to 200, and 80% of my target market. Harvey sends 1,000 invites every week, and he does it really efficiently by slicing and dicing, using filters and stuff. He gets 150 who reply, accept it, and got 40 or 50 that attend. But you build on that 20 that keep coming back, and you add another 40. And pretty soon, you're getting into bigger numbers, and you got a system. And I think that's important. Why have a show without an audience? Why have an audience and not have a show? So, and Dennis, to finish up, says, agree, stay good and profit is a profit and becomes profitable. Thank you, Dennis, for ending on this way. I want to thank everybody for coming here today. Come back tomorrow. We've got Leslie Flowers and another gentleman. And then Sunday, we've got 2 wonderful educators. If you can make it, it's well worth your while. And then Monday, we've got a new person joining, Samuel Borelli, who is a great guy out of Italy, offices in Lisbon, and has 14 offices all over the world in recycling and reclamation and sustainability. So that's going to be great. Kelly and Harvey are going to help them kick it off. Okay, Linda. Linda's a big one. I'll have to save it for another time. We're a little bit over. Thank you, Linda. So with that, I want to thank Paul. I want to thank Dan. I want to thank the audience, and have a great day. And, go out and make it happen. It's possible. I believe you. So anyways, with that said, take care, Paul. Take care, Dan. And